to do, I've just got a few things that we're going to talk about today. We will do 3 workshops. The 4th one, I'm also going to do one at the end of the challenge because a lot of people don't think about the post-diet plan, and I'll make sure you do. But today, so each one, obviously there's so much we can cover in each one. I've got a few things we'll go through. You will get a chance to ask additional questions at the end. However, I might even give you a few chances after we go through each topic, because otherwise, if I go to the end there and you had something about here, you'll forget about it. So we'll keep going through it. Alright, ready to start? Cool. Alright, what we're going to talk about is our energy balance, okay? So that's pretty much talking about our concept of calories in versus calories out. So we may or may not know concepts around this. Our maintenance is essentially how many calories we need to consume to maintain our weight, okay? So obviously, daily activity, our body is burning a certain amount of calories, okay? Eating that is going to maintain. Break that down a little bit more before I go on. We've got something called, some of these terms, they might not make 100%, but that's fine. We'll just, like I said, break down as much as we need. If anything's going over your head, please let me know. So we're going to talk about something called a BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate, okay? Our BMR is essentially, if you were to do nothing all day, your body is still doing things, your body's still breathing, it's still pumping blood, it's moving, everything like that. So even if you had a day where you're sick and you're laying down all day, your body still needs a certain amount of calories to just survive that day, okay? So a lot of people don't think about that aspect when they do go into diets. They eat some ridiculously low amount of calories, which our BMR we're looking at is around 1,200 minimum for most adult females. It might be 1,500, and then males it's 1,800. And that's what I'm saying, is you need that to be able to be sick in bed all day. Understand? So obviously when we're going to diet, those types of numbers are ridiculous. So if you ever see anything like that, we want to stick away from them. Now, if you guys got, any of you got DEXA scans too, those numbers on there are also, some of them I believe are a bit lower probably than what you'd need. So if anyone's looked at that, they've seen a number and they thought, I'm going to stick to that because that's what it tells me to do. Be cautious, because that, if they didn't know what your training goals were, they didn't know what your daily activity was, none of that's taken into consideration. They don't know you come to do CrossFit. You probably need more than what it has set out, okay? So keep that in mind. Now so stepping away from that maintenance, so obviously like I said, calories in versus calories out, as a general consensus, you need a certain amount to maintain. When we then talk about deficit, that's when we're going to a diet phase, we're trying to lose weight. We have to be consuming fewer calories than our body is burning. Yeah, so if we're burning 2,000 calories a day, we need to be consuming 1,800 or slightly less to be losing. When we're talking about deficits too, it's not that a matter that the less is better. That's not the case. We want to actually be as low. So we want to diet as many calories as we can. Okay. What happens then is further down the track, when we're looking at something like a 12-week challenge, instead of getting to a point where you plateau 4 weeks in and you're eating something really low, you're eating down that 1,200, 1,600 worth of calories, what happens when you plateau? You can't do anything else. Like, you can't take away more calories because it becomes super restrictive, and that's normally the point where we go, oh, I'm just going to throw it in and go back to eating heaps of calories. Alright? So like I said, when we're making a deficit, we're trying to do it as high as we can. We're trying to make the smallest decrease. So it might be something like a 10% decrease as your upper limit, and then 15. When we're talking about a 20% decrease from what your maintenance is, that's already looking at quite a drastic cut. Okay, so that's really like, we don't really want to be doing that until really at the end of anything, or unless you're spending like only 4 weeks in this diet and then moving on. And even then, understand that's going to be quite restrictive at that point. Yeah? When we then talk about surplus, so for anybody that's wanting to build muscle, that's when that surplus comes in. Okay, so as the thing, you might hear a whole things out there too that you can lose fat and gain muscle at the same time, and that is super, super challenging to do. So generally you have to either choose one goal or the other and spend a bit of time at each different spot, okay? So surplus, like I said, that is when we specifically want to gain muscle. We can't make something from nothing, is the concept there, okay? Unless you're a beginner. Beginners, your first 6 months, which most of you guys have been, well, past 6 months. Tegan's just come back, so you might get a few beginner gains there. The beginner gains is when you have got that chance that you might be able to lose a bit of fat, build a bit of muscle. It's not that like your fat's converting to your muscle or anything like that. It's just that there's different things happening in your body, and that might be the end result, okay? Otherwise, you spend a bit of time eating in each, okay? So that's going to go into this part here. So fat loss. You guys here, how many of you guys is your goal is fat loss? Just raise your hand if your goal is fat loss. It could just be wanting to eat better. So pretty much majority here wants to do fat loss, so I won't spend too much time talking about muscle gain. So fat loss. So like I said, we set, and we will go through some strategies down here. We set that maintenance We can eat in a slight deficit, so we eat slightly less than we are burning. Or another way we can do it too is down the track is if we are eating fewer calories than we're burning, but we get to a point where we're not making much progress, we can do more movement. So not just necessarily mean we need to do crazy more sessions in the gym. It could be a matter of, okay, I'm going to, instead of doing 8,000 steps a day, I'm going to do 10,000 steps a day because we're making more movement, we're burning more calories from doing that. Yeah. When we're eating, whether we're eating for, and we will go again further down, when we're eating for fat loss, muscle gain, anything like that, we're always going to be still focusing on things like our protein intake. Everything is going to still play a role and be important within that. So moving on, before I come back down there, so moving on, talking about our training, daily activity. So like I just said then, when we need to create a stronger deficit, we can increase movement. Okay, so that's kind of coming to this concept here. Training, obviously we all have our set amounts. That's going to come into play if we can be, when we're even trying to lose weight, obviously we don't want to lose our muscle mass. Our muscle mass also contributes to our metabolism. So if we're losing muscle, that's going to slow down, that's going to make it harder to lose weight. So we want to prioritize our training and trying to keep, even if you can't build much strength in that time, you're trying not to lose any strength or anything like that, okay? Try and still focus on that there. Training numbers, days, it's up to you, it doesn't matter. Like a minimum, probably 3 days to get some sort of consistent goal with it, and then building up, obviously finding your happy limit too. You don't want to be overtraining and doing anything super ridiculous when you are going to a fat loss stage as well. Daily activity, so like I said, the more steps you're doing, the more activity you're doing, the more you're going to burn. So if we get two comparisons, if we compare somebody who is an endurance athlete and it's running hours and hours a week, or we look at somebody who's labour intensive, so they finish their sessions here, they go on their on tools all day. Obviously they're going to burn more than the person sitting at a computer desk during the day, okay? So those are concepts we take into play too. So obviously deficits, everything like that, it is individual to you, rather than saying, okay, this is your number, this is what you've got to eat. It is totally individual to you, what your training activity is like, what your daily activity is like, what your body needs, how tall you are, your age, everything comes into play with that, all right? Before I go on there, any questions with that part there? And please don't hesitate to ask questions. Nothing? Does that make sense? Anything does make sense?
Say if you're going down anyway, with your strength, how do you maintain that?
How do you
maintain that? Is that strength programming?
Yeah. And tracking your numbers. Obviously,
I noticed that if I go down.
And you shouldn't, like, if you're losing strength, your deficit's probably too large. Like, in something like a 12-week, you shouldn't see huge decreases in your strength unless you're doing a huge deficit. So that's coming back to that concept of, okay, we only want to start maybe, like, I can use myself as an example of this. I'm going to go into a slight deficit, and I'm going to start really modest. I'm going to do a 10%. I don't have much I want to lose, but also my priority is my performance, okay? So when we're talking about that, if our strengths are priority, we don't want to make a huge deficit. So
that's where I go wrong.
You go too hard.
2 weeks.
Nah. And when we're talking about weight loss, actually, weight loss, that's an important one too. When we're talking about how much weight we should be realistically losing, no more than 1% body weight a week. So so no more. So like 60 kilo person, that's like 600 grams or whatever that is. So no more. So when people get saying you're losing 5 kilos a week,
no, in 2 weeks,
Oh, 2 weeks, but still 200,
yeah. No,
that's
no
different Let's do it.
Do it. It's more, and you will, like, when you talk about, again, we'll talk about this at the end, but when you do lose weight, you will lose initially like some water weight and other things. But our idea, so we don't want to go in such a big deficit that we're then risking losing muscle, we're risking losing strength.
Energy and things like that.
Yes, and then not being able to stick to it either. Like if we get to a point where we go, okay, this is not realistic, I feel like shit.
Yeah, something that comes back, you put 5 kilos off back into it. That's why I noticed I can do that and then numbers long term.
So we start going modest. We always start with small and build on it. Don't do anything drastic. And ideally,
don't do it on.
We already know that.
Alright, so happy with that? Any other questions there?
What is the most percent deficit you do?
Like I said, 20% is getting quite
So
drastic.
between 10 and 20
10 to
years.
20. For most people, if I'm, like in my clients I have, most people I set around a 10 to 15% deficit. And that's given that, like, that is an accurate maintenance that I'm calculating and that they're saying they're eating, like, sometimes you might...
Pure fat loss goal, not muscle.
Yeah. And then, like, if we're saying, like, 20% is, like, quite drastic. And then obviously you adjust seeing what suits with you. But for most, I'd say, 10% is probably a highest limit, like probably above or below that, you're probably not going to see much changes. So it's probably like that happy limit for most people is probably around 15%.
Okay.
But again, everyone's different, everyone loses weight. It depends on your dieting history. If you've been dieting heaps before that, you're not going to lose it as efficiently. So there is a whole lot of factors to come in. So it's a bit trial and error, just find what works. We've got 12 weeks, don't have to do anything, and that's week 1. On the other end, if you start a diet and you're losing weight too quick, eat more food. Increase it slightly. Find that happy limit, find that middle. Yeah?
The 1% is the key though, isn't it?
Yeah. So if we start losing like too much, if we're losing more than that 1% a week, we're probably going, I'm risking losing strength, I'm risking losing muscle, probably too much protein. And it's like on the scale in our heads, you go, oh man, like look how easy it is, I've lost this weight. But you've got to weigh it up. Do you want to risk losing performance? Do you want to risk losing strength? If you do, cool,
Go for it.
But if you care for that, be careful. Yeah? Cool. Sorry? Moving on. So, macronutrients, micronutrients. Our macronutrients are protein, fat, carbs. They're our macronutrients because they make up a big chunk of our diet. Micronutrients are then our vitamins, minerals, so all that kind of food that makes up a small amount. So that's where that micro comes from. When we're talking about our diet, so protein, fat, carbs, they all play a role. Often carbs gets the bad rap. Carbs is important. If you're working out in the gym, carbs is probably the predominant source you are using, especially in our CrossFit session. Okay, so carbs is a big one. Starting from the top, protein. Protein is essential. We know protein as our muscle building generally. So everyone thinks of it as building a muscle. Not only that, it has a role pretty much in every part of our body. So skin, nails, hair, organs, everything, even the transport of different nutrients around our body. Protein has a role in that. So protein is essential in our diet. It is, when we're looking at our macronutrients, it's generally the one that we prioritize most because these two have a few, I will go through, have a few little things that can be adjusted within it. Okay, so protein is our essential. When we're looking at energy balance, so we've set our certain amount of food we need to eat. When we're talking about protein, a general guide to make sure you are eating enough if you're tracking, or if you can even just look at your food labels when you're consuming food. We're aiming for around 1.4 grams minimum to 2 grams per kilo body weight is kind of our ideal range. Okay, if you go slightly over that, it's not going to hurt. There's the whole theory of it being really damaging to your livers and stuff like that. Like, there's not much to prove behind that. So, but what happens too is we have a protein pull effect. So after that point, if we consume more protein, sure you can, but your body's not really going to take it in. Yeah, so we're just wasting our time in a way. Especially when we can put that extra additional calories towards our fat or carbs that also play a role in our body. Okay? So 1.4, and saying that as 1.4, it's more for your general pop. So people that aren't really training as much, they might have more sedentary lifestyle. That is kind of your, or for people who really struggle to eat it. For most people, I'd prefer them to be getting up towards that 2 grams per kilo of body weight, okay? So if you're a 100 kilo person, you would be eating 200 grams of protein, yeah? A lot of people might be surprised until they start actually looking at their protein if they're actually eating enough. A lot of people think they are, and they're not, yeah? So even if you're eating meat, different things like that, you still probably find it difficult. With our protein, so our sources for our protein, meat, so beef, red meat, chicken, seafood, so fish, tuna, prawns, all that kind of stuff is also meat. When we're talking about dairy then, eggs are protein. Greek yogurt, something with low fat, low carbs, that's going to be high protein. A lot of full cream dairy and stuff like that does have protein as well. A lot of our foods, they're not purely though like one macronutrient, so it's not like it's just purely a protein, a fat or a carb. Often a lot have a bit of a contribution. So yeah, when we're talking about protein, it's our meat. When we're talking about non-meat or non-animal protein, we can look at tofu, tempeh, edamame, chickpeas, lentils, okay? Doesn't go too much further than that. Like I said, other foods like your whole grains or nuts, they do have protein in them, but they are not a protein source because they have higher fat levels, yeah? Right. So when we move on then, so fat, again, fat is important in our diet. Fat now, its role, our hormonal health, our cell structure, again, transport of certain nutrients, they use fat as their base, yeah? So it does have a role in it. When we are now setting up fat, on a minimum, probably 1 gram per kilo body weight, yeah? So 100 kilo person is eating minimum 100 grams of fat if we're looking at those numbers. For a general pop person though, they might find that because we have such a little maintenance here, I've just told you that this one we're setting a certain number, this one we're aiming for a minimum. This is why carbs is often our outlier, our one that is either super high or it might get reduced because we only have so much food to play with. Yeah? So that's where that concept comes in. Skipping ahead, I'll come back to fat. Carbs are important too, so like I said before, they are your main fuel source. So if you're training to your main fuel source, like in your high intensity, your main fuel source is going to be carbs. It's the easiest to digest, it's the easiest to use, it's the one that gets stored in our muscles. So when we're talking about like if we really want to prioritize our sport performance, we really want to be eating high carbs. That's why also we don't want to spend a lot of time in the diet phase, because especially if you guys are here and you're training for performance, we want to have carbs when we can. When we're dieting and it's going to be a short amount of time, that's probably the one we're going to take it from. Yeah? When we're talking, so coming back to fat, it is the most calorie dense, so it's going to be the most satiating, so you're going to feel a lot fuller from eating fat. So when we look at someone who's general pop who doesn't train, not an issue, they eat high protein, high fat because that's going to keep them more satisfied and they will reduce their carbs. When we're now talking about us who are in here training, we might go for a more balanced split. We'll go protein, we'll kind of set that minimum or that happy limit for our fat, and then we try to consume as much of that remainder as we can as carbs, because that's going to help us with our performance. Make sense? So when I'm talking about if we're now looking at our calories and stuff like that, so saying that one is the most caloric dense, when we're looking at 1 gram of protein or 1 gram of carbs, they are 4 calories. When we're looking at 1 gram of fat, it is 9 calories, okay? Not saying it's a bad guy either, they all have their important role, but that's how that consensus works, yeah? So that's protein, fat, carbs, pretty good rundown of each of them. Moving on, our vitamins, minerals, so our micronutrients, that's what we're important with these. We'll talk about vitamins and minerals. They are, again, they're important for our performance. Obviously, our body runs better when we have more micronutrients in our body, when we're eating more. And when we talk about micronutrients, what their food type is, it is fruit and veg, whole grains, nuts and seeds, lean meats with protein, even organ meats. You can get some in dairy, yeah, organ meats, dairy, eggs, all that kind of stuff. They have different, because obviously if you look at them, think of it as a multivitamin. If you look at all your lists, all those different foods have different amounts of each one. So when we're talking, rather than complicating it and saying you have to eat certain this food for this and certain that for that, just think you're trying to get that range of fruit and veg, whole grains, nuts and seeds, legumes, chickpeas, beans, all that kind of stuff, and then, like I said, meats and stuff like that as well. Yeah? So that's going to make sure you're still getting all those vitamins and minerals, you're not missing out anything, and that's going to make sure we're performing our best. I skip back, I did forget to tell you food. So when we're talking about fat foods as well, I just want to list those foods as well so you make sure you know. So like I said before, your nuts, nut butters, they are going to be predominantly higher in fat. Our full cream dairy, again, that's all that kind of stuff is going to have higher fat. Tofu and stuff like that, they are predominantly protein and then predominantly made up of fat for the remainder. Oils, butters, anything like that is also our fat content, yeah? So that's why when we're talking about too, with things being, I guess, calorie dense, think about pizzas. You think of it as a carb. It's not necessarily, it has a load of cheese, dairy, oils, and that's why it's actually ends up being high calories, because our fats are high in calories. Carbs are then oats, rice, fruit, veggies are also carbs. Whole grains, most whole grains are predominantly carbs. Sugars, so lollies, all that kind of stuff is carbs. And then processed foods, often again because they're high in sugar and high in refined carbs, flours, everything like that, which is all carbs. Yeah? So that's everything there with those. When we then look at supplementation, generally before, so supplementation, it could be useful, but we don't know that. We've got to make sure first. So if you think, oh, I'm feeling pretty crappy, and your first instinct is, what supplements do I need? Maybe first look at your diet. Maybe first make sure, are we getting enough fruit and veggies? Are we consuming enough vitamins and minerals? If we're not consuming enough, maybe that's why we feel like pretty shitty, because we're not getting that. Our vitamins and minerals, they make our body run more efficiently. They can even make it easier to lose weight. Because if our body's running more efficiently, it's breaking through fat more efficiently, and it's going to be able to lose weight more efficiently. Does that make sense? So when we talk about supplements, first of all, prioritize. Are we eating enough protein? Are we eating enough fat for our hormones? Are we eating enough carbs for energy? Are we then eating enough fruit and veg? Are we eating enough nuts and seeds? Are we eating whole grains? Are we eating lean meats? Or are we more inclined to be eating sugars and processed foods? If we then look at that, we might go, okay, maybe I should test all those things, see how I feel of it, then look at supplementation. Then see if it's necessary. It might still be necessary. So definitely make sure you go get your bloods tested. Go see if there's anything that you are lacking in, so you know for sure before you could go get supplements, but you could just end up being wasting $100 a month that you don't need to be wasted. So, like I said, it could be necessary. It's not to say it's not, and it's not to say that you don't have something that you might be deficient in or anything like that. But check that diet first, then go get your bloods tested, and then you can know if specifically there's anything you need to look into. When we're talking about sleep and stuff like that too, again, look at that quality of your diet. Are we prioritizing sleep? What are our sleep routines like before going to bed? Before considering that supplement. Because again, we want to try do things as naturally and as best we can before we're relying on something else as well. Yeah? Use those supplements when we need them. Does that make sense, sir? Any other questions with any of that?
I've got two.
Yeah.
But you can go first if you've got one.
We just do the protein, say we need an extra 30 grams. What's the easiest on the go?
Protein shake. So
Yeah, or even easier than that. Is there something that you go to the shop and buy that, protein bars and things like they try and say
Just a whole steak.
Just have
it
it in your pocket.
That's
So
it.
coming back first of all, so supplementation, saying protein shake. Protein shake's not a bad thing. So protein, like when we're looking at what a protein shake actually is, most of them are whey, which is actually just, if we're looking at a milk, whey comes from milk. Whey comes from milk, and what happens is, so the milk as a total is not high in protein because it actually has fat and other things in it. But what they've done is broken down that milk to take away the whey from it to make a protein powder. So it's not a bad thing. It's coming from that milk, if that makes sense. And then when we're talking about vegan ones like rice and pea, rice is not high in protein. So again, they've taken that apart to get the part that is high in protein to make a protein powder from.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing. It's still a whole food.
Away from protein shakes.
Protein shakes.
So something different on
Beef
I don't
jerky.
like
If you
doing
don't like
that.
having actually
See, little steaks.
dehydrated steaks, beef jerky.
So
beef jerky.
okay.
Chobani, like a yogurt, they have pouches now of yogurt too. You can actually go buy
Yeah.
yogurt and you can suck on a yogurt and you've got protein from that.
Yeah.
Roasted chickpeas and stuff like that. It's starting to step away because chickpeas will have protein, but they also got carbs and stuff in it. Tin tuna, if you can, like eat stuff like that, because you can buy
Something
that.
I find if I come to trainer or I
Yeah.
feel like eating protein.
You can get this even like
eggs and that I'm over all that.
Yeah, look closely at things like there's a few certain places, like I've told a few of you guys about different things. Like Aldi has this super high protein bread. You can make a sandwich.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with eating a sandwich on the go. Or you can make a sandwich yourself. Go buy a roll. Go buy some roast chicken that's already made. Buy some spinach. Put it on a sandwich. Got protein. Like it doesn't have to be.
I know you got all those things, but saying is there anything like just easy you know if you grab off the shelf that comes in packets of
Big
10,
jerky.
apart from like the beef jerky and
not really.
yeah, that's all right.
It's hard. This is why it's hard to eat protein. Like because we've got to purposely make an effort. It's not like.
Because I look at it as my main meals and my protein, but I know there's other things that I probably should be.
You've got to prioritize those snacks, and like I said, always look out for different things. Like there's certain cereals that are high in protein that you can eat dry, like
Protein
so-
pasta.
protein pasta.
Yeah.
But again, those kind of stuff need prep unless you
Yeah.
fucking pasta.
I used to have all the eggs boiled and things like that.
But
That's
that's
so
just
bad.
prep.
I should have 6 months to be done.
Yeah. So that's why it is like protein is a hard one.
Yeah.
And generally, when we're speaking about meals too, it's not like you have to have like a huge amount of snacks too. You could be having 4 meals, 5 meals a day, and hit that protein intake.
Yes, it'll give you numbers.
Yeah. So it's not like you can have it that way. Yeah. And then it just gives you an idea and having those staples. And sometimes it gets a bit boring. You might have to have the same snacks, but tracking, just being aware of what you're eating. So you're making, even if in your head mentally you're going, I've had this for lunch. For each meal, okay, have I had my protein? Have I had my fruit and veggies? Have I had some fat in that? Just to be satisfied. And then can I get that extra snack in if I'm lacking in protein?
Yeah. So my first one was in terms of like saying if we're like actually meat. What's the easiest way you find? Because obviously like 750 grams of steak might not actually equal 750 grams of protein.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
do you just go on like a fitness pal type thing to figure that out?
We will come, so we'll talk about that down here.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to talk about something called hand
okay,
portions,
sweet.
which is going to use like your hand, so you don't even have to use
Oh,
my
yeah.
fitness pal.
Okay.
I will talk about how you can
Because
use
I
my
stick with
fitness
that
pal.
for like 2 weeks and then
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll give you some ideas when it comes to that.
Okay.
What was the other question you had?
It's a bit more me specific, but because I've got like a insulin resistance issue, so I usually am like capped with the amount of carbs I'm actually allowed to have before I start getting like other sort of health symptoms. I never know, like, you know what I mean, like if I'm capped at a certain amount of carbs, does it matter whether, you know what I mean, in terms of like calories, I struggle to hit those because it's like, oh, well, do I get them from protein? Do I get them from fats? Do I just not eat?
You're better off eating.
That's what I thought, but I just don't know
So
which
you're better
one
off
you would
eating
suggest.
more
Because I know keto's got a lot of rap because you have
Yeah.
obviously heaps of fat. And
I would say
carbs and
make sure
things.
you're hitting that protein first. So if you're not hitting that 2 grams per kilo body weight of protein,
Yeah.
do that first.
Yeah.
Then rest is fat.
Okay.
Because fat is like it's most calorie dense. It's
Yeah.
gonna be the easiest to hit your total calories
Yeah.
because it is most calorie dense.
That's what I thought.
And then performance, like it's all this stuff is self-trial. I can't tell you to eat more protein if that's gonna make you feel shit.
Yeah,
Eating more
yeah,
fat makes you feel better. So it's personal preference. It's not like one size fits all. Like everyone, some people perform better off eating high fat. Some people perform better off
Yeah.
eating high carb. Some people perform better off eating high protein. So it's kind of just experiment, see what your performance like is in the gym, see what your daily performance is like, and choose that. If you try something else and it doesn't make you feel good, you know what? It doesn't matter. It's not meant to be for you.
So just to not give myself a heart attack if I went down the fat path.
Yeah, no, you should be fine. And again, it's looking at more quality rather than like going, okay, my fat products, do I eat more chocolate? Like it's like looking like, can I eat more nuts
Good
and
fats.
yeah, look, can I eat more nuts and seeds? Can I chuck an avocado in there? Can I have some more full instead of having skim dairy? Can I have my full cream dairy? Like,
Yeah,
so that's different ways you can add
Alright,
in.
sweet.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I do. Blood type, does that impact? Not really.
All that
No.
stuff. So again, like we'll break that
That's
down
like
in the
a
Fad
really-
Diets. A lot of that stuff, it's rumors, it's myths. So like it's a lot of just magazines. Like there's not much evidence behind it. Yeah, no. Nah. Oh, I guess it's
I think when I heard you that you could pregnant or having surgery.
They found that the addition is that things that they've gone and changed and are changeable.
With
Because I'll go to your blood test just to see.
a lot of people like common things, I guess, yeah, and because we're training, because we're going to be burning out so much, we might be deficient in things. We are all inside, we're not spending much time out in the sun, so it's little things like that that people generally don't realise. Yeah, and then bringing up those things, you might need supplementation, and then having the supplementation will probably feel better more than yeah.
Because they do like the blood test for your diet, does that really expand?
All of those are just that. So that can shift us on, if there's no more questions on that part there. Matt, so we'll shift on to the next part. So talking about Fad Diets. When we're talking about Fad Diets, we're talking about keto, we're talking about eating your blood type, we're talking about intermittent fasting, anything else you can think of that's not away from that just standard eating meals. Yeah? So they can work, and they might work great for you. So you might choose where you might do keto, and you might lose, if you're a super overweight person, you might lose 30-40 kilos from it. Awesome. And some people might be able to stick that off. On the other hand, if you look at that and you go, oh, that sounds so restrictive, I can only think I can stick to that for like a week, but I'm going to do it anyway, I'm going to try to do 4 weeks plus of it. Probably not going to work. You're probably going to do it, you might lose the weight, you're going to, a month comes around and you go, this sucks, and you go back to eating all the food, you eat all your carbs and stuff like that. So with intermittent fasting, it might work. The way it does work is because it shortens the amount you're eating to a short window. So instead of, if you're talking about a standard fast, it's like an 8-hour window, 16-hour fast. And all that means is, okay, my time comes up and I can't eat any more food. So it kind of just naturally makes you into that deficit. There's nothing magic about them. It's just that they reduce your calories in one way or the other. Yeah. So like I said, they can work, and it's not to diss anyone that wants to try anything, because it can work for you. But it's knowing that could potentially be unsustainable. Like you might not be able to stick to it. And is it really worth it, or can you make smaller changes to just eat more nutritiously? And that's gonna. I said, we do know that every one of these has an importance to it. When we're talking about keto, and I guess why those do work, it more comes down, it's more complex than that. So it's more, like I said, your protein set amount, your fat set amount, your carbs. The reason it's not a set amount is because our body can actually make a carb from proteins and fats. Okay, without going into detail, making it super complex for you, just understand that general consensus. Our body cannot make a protein from a carb. Okay, so that's how that concept works. Because of the way, like I said, carbs are easiest to digest and use. These can be, our body does crazy things because it needs carbs to use carbs. So it can use fat, break it down, turn it into a carb so we can use it for energy. Yeah? Without making that super complicated. That's how that general consensus works. So that's why people can do keto diets like that. But then if we start to cut out protein or fat from our diet, we're probably not going to feel too crash hot because they are essential in our diet. Yeah? So Fad Diets, your choice. They don't, most people I wouldn't recommend doing them. Like I said, try it, and if you can do it and understand the concept behind it so that you don't have that bounce back, it might be worth using. What we can do instead, so we'll have a look, shift into these now. So we're going to talk something about hand portion guidelines. We'll talk about macro tracking. But hand portion guidelines is pretty much going, okay, I can track food without using a tracking app, without counting my grams and my calories, anything like that. It's using your hands. Yeah? So what we're talking about with this, our hand portion, we're going to look at our hand here. A protein is a palm, okay? So generally, if you're a taller, large male, you're going to have big hands. If you're a small female, you're going to have smaller hands. So it's more related to your body. Yeah? So your protein is going to be here. That's one palm. Yeah? Your carbs, so then going to be cupped handful. Yeah? So that's our carbs. Our fat is one thumb. Okay? So like I said, it's more calorie dense, so we're having a smaller amount. Yeah? So one thumb. Our so vitamins and minerals, so our fruit and veggies is one fistful. Yeah? When we're then talking about how much we should be consuming, if we're looking at a base of 4 meals per day, if you are a female, it is generally somewhere around 4 to 6 servings, okay, of that. So pretty much per meal, you're having 1 to maybe 2, depending on your size and your body's needs. If you're male, you're consuming 6 to 8, okay? So it's not like females need 4, guys need 8. Guys don't need to eat twice as much as a female. It's saying that depending on your size, depending on everything, it's somewhere in that range. Obviously, say if you were a female and you started with 4 servings of each and you were starving, eat more. It means it's not enough for you. Yeah? We don't want to be absolutely starving when we're in diet, we should only be slightly hungry. And there's certain strategies again, when we're getting slightly hungry, eat more low calorie foods, so eat more fruit and veg, eat more things like that, because that's going to fill you up without being super calorie dense. Yeah? So we adjust. So that's our general starting point. If you want to lose weight, you might take away, if you're a female, you might take away half a thumb to half a handful. And if you're a male, you might go to take down a full handful of carbs and half fat. Our protein stays the same. Yeah, because our protein is needed for our body, whether we're losing weight, gaining. Yeah. And a break back on that protein too. So when we're trying to lose weight, protein is not going to make you bulky or anything like that. Protein is essential for maintaining our muscle. Like I said, when we're talking about surplus and gaining muscle, you need to eat protein, but you need to eat more food to gain that muscle. Yeah? So if we're in a diet, we're gonna, at least we're trying to maintain that muscle. We don't want to lose it. Yeah? So it gets really hard to maintain that muscle when you're in a deficit. So a lot of people, I know they get into the gym and they're scared of getting bulky. It is super hard to get bulky. Like even those trying to build muscle, like it's hard, it's not easy. So build these things. That's our hand portion guidelines. So like I said, you trial, no one size fits all, trialing to find what works for you. But that's an easy way that you can look at tracking your intake. We're going to skip that straight down to macro and then come back to intuitive eating. So macros then is our tracking our food, tracking our protein, tracking our carbs, tracking our fat by the grams. Okay? It can, people I guess look at that and they can think, oh, that can be quite excessive, that can be quite intense, that's full on. Reflect now in the gym, do you track your training numbers? Do you track your time in your workout? How is tracking your food any different to doing that? Yeah? Sure, it might be a bit more time consuming, a bit more difficult, but it has purpose. So all it does too, it raises awareness. So obviously, like we said when I was coming back to these numbers before, if you are eating, if we look at our total when we're talking about macro tracking, how do we do it? Starting point, you can go just get any pretty much calculation and get a random start point that counters in your daily activity and counters in your daily training. Yeah? Alternatively, you could just track for 2 weeks at your maintenance. So track what your normal diet is for 2 weeks, and if in that 2 weeks you don't lose any weight, you pretty much know you're eating around that maintenance. You've then got your starting point. So if you've got that maintenance, we go back to that deficit. Okay, what was my maintenance? Can I make a 10% cut from that? Can I make a 15% cut from that? And that will be your deficit. On the variation, surplus will be reversed. Yeah? So that's ways you can do that. Like I said, with tracking, like we're not going to know exactly how many calories your body needs to maintain unless you were like lab tested daily. And even then, day to day is going to change. It's not like you do the exact same workout per day. You don't do the exact same steps walking around. A work task might be harder one day. You might pick up one of your friends' babies or something like one day and that's lifting. So again, there's not a set amount of calories you burn per day, it's going to change. It's just finding that estimated starting point. We're then going to play with that deficit. If we don't get results, we make a slight cut. When we're making that slight cut, it might just be 50 to 100 calories a week. It's not like it's anything drastic again. We're just trying to do those little small changes. Like I said, we're trying to diet on as many calories as we can because it gives us more to play with down the track. if we diet on as low as calories we can, our body adapts, it's going to make it so much harder for us. And we want to make it easier rather than harder. Yeah? So macro tracking, so yeah, we set our protein, we set our fat, remainder will just be carbs, essentially. Yeah? And then that gives us that guidance, we play with it. Like I said, just like we do with training, we play with it. It might be a bit overwhelming the first 2 weeks, but it's going to raise your awareness and it's going to get easier. And then down the track, we might shift away from it. It's not like a forever thing too. It's not like you forever have to track your macros. Otherwise, if you don't, that's it, you lose your progress. It's not the case and it shouldn't be the case. So that's when we talk about intuitive eating. If you were to straight up, intuitive eating is pretty much just eating towards our intuition. So understanding our hunger levels, our fullness levels, eating as our body needs, and as food we enjoy, everything like that. It's pretty hard to do that if you don't have an idea of what protein, carbs, fats you need, how much portions you need. So it's good to kind of do something just to gain that awareness. Then we might be able to shift into some more intuitive eating. We might shift back and forth between macro tracking and listening to our body. And even when we're macro tracking on hand portions, we're still trying to listen to our body. So we're not just eating off a set number, we're also still going, do I feel full of this? What makes me feel satisfied? What makes me perform my best? And you're trying to listen to all those factors as well. Yeah, so all of those come important with that. Does that make sense? Are there any more questions there?
With the 4 to 6 servings per meal.
No, per day.
Per day.
And so the hand portion.
That's why I was hoping per meal.
So the portion, the palm thing, that's per meal.
That's per
Yeah,
meal.
that's the one, sorry.
Yeah.
What did I say?
Yeah.
4 to 6 servings per meal.
Unless if you're doing a 23-hour fast, you only get 1 meal.
That's what I meant.
So obviously, like I said, that's a starting point, and that's like that's
That's
just
how you
saying
build
that
your
for
build.
general pop, that's probably going to be enough. But then even then, like if you actually looked at all the protein, depending on the quality of your protein, like it might not be quite enough protein for you. So it's kind of getting that awareness. Again, you might just chuck it in, track the numbers,
Put on like a
see if it's
timer.
the right amounts, and then you can shift away and know. But yeah, it's all just trial and error, just finding what works out those methods. Like I said, there's no set one that works best for you, but realistically, these ones are a bit more flexible than any type of fad diet out there because they're considering our protein, carbs, fats. It's not really taking out anything, it's just being smart about it. And then obviously when we're talking about macro tracking, flexible dieting, people think they can eat whatever to fill those macronutrients. It's going to be pretty hard to hit those calories at the same time as eating your protein with it, eating whatever. So there's always got to be some kind of awareness. It's not to say that you have to eat perfectly clean. You can eat chocolate, you can have ice cream, you can have all that kind of stuff. Just do it in reason. Just do it, and again, sometimes you go, okay, I want to do that in reason, but I open a chocolate block and I eat one. I can't just stop at one block, I want to eat the whole thing. So there is times when you consider, there is times when you might consider having that out of the house just to get rid of that craving, and you might just buy single serves home or stuff like that, because then you're still enjoying it, you're not cutting it out, you're not making it super restrictive, you're just being reasonable with it. Yeah? Awesome. So yeah, that's pretty much, any questions there?
That's what I did with
So moving on to the last one, just setting realistic goals. So talking about that now. So like I said, with setting realistic goals, 12 weeks is a long time. Like you might think, oh, 12 weeks,
3 months.
into that short, it's 3 months.
Yeah.
And imagine in the same, like if you did a really restricted diet, eating the same thing every day for 12 weeks, that's a long time and that's hard. So be easy on yourself. Don't go, okay, I have to be ridiculously restrictive and do that for 12 weeks through. Factor in, be realistic, go, okay, I might have a birthday event coming out and I'm going to go out for dinner that night. I might have a week away because I've got a holiday booked. That's fine. You might do 11 out of that 12 weeks. And if we think of it as a lifestyle approach instead of just going, this is my 12 weeks, I'm going to get to that goal, and after 12 weeks, you don't have a plan after that, it's better to go, okay, I might just step away, I'm going to use this 12 weeks as a lifestyle change, I'm going to make it more conscious, and instead of doing something restricted that you then can't stick to. So, yeah, like I said, go easy with it. Start, when we're talking about back to that deficit, start with something easy and give yourself time. Don't go to the hardest part in week 1 because it's unlikely that you're still going to be there in week 12. Yeah? And then when we're talking about food, we're aiming, I do like the 80-20 split in saying 80% nutrition food, 20% fun food, because I think that has a better approach. It's saying, okay, we're moderating it, we're letting it in our diet still, and we're still focusing on our health and our nutrition. Yeah, rather than going, okay, I'm cutting everything out, I'm gonna allow it, and then end of the week you go, cave in, you buy a ton of ice cream, you eat the whole thing because you're like, I've got to finish it before Monday. Don't do that.
My love story. But eat it all the time tomorrow.
So don't do that. So yeah, so what we're saying with that, we're saying we're being realistic, we're going, okay, I'm not doing anything, I'm not like I'm sure a lot of you, knowing this 12-week challenge is coming to that weekend before you go, I'm going to eat all my junk food, I'm going to have a cheat meal, I'm going to do all this stuff before the 12 week starts. I know that, I understand that. So stop doing that, because that's never going to get, if you always have that mentality, you're never going to get anywhere. Yeah, so that is not, it's not sustainable, it's not realistic. Like, there's good food out there, we want to enjoy social events, we want to enjoy alcohol at times. Like, you're allowed to do that. Let yourself do that, enjoy it, don't feel guilty for it, move on, focus on your nutrition, focus on your health. Yeah, so when we're thinking about, instead of making it, this is good, this is bad, think nutritious versus not so nutritious. I can eat that, it can eat that stuff. But majority of the time, I want to perform my best, I want to feel my best, all that kind of stuff. So keep that your priority rather than just making it purely thinking about it as a fat gain, fat loss, if that makes sense. And then, like I said, not beating yourself up in that first week, just going, okay, I'll make small changes. Maybe this week didn't go to plan already, that's fine. Next week, what can we do to make that a little bit better? And to keep that moving forward. And then always each week, what can I do to make my meal that little bit better? What can I do to make this week a little bit better? How can I get back on track? If I fell off track, does it really matter? No, doesn't matter. How long did it take you? Like, if you think about how long did it take you to gain weight? How long did it take you to get to where you are now? Why do you think 12 weeks is going to fix you? Like, we've got to be realistic. We've got to go slowly, do it. 12 weeks you might get a couple kilos lost, and that's awesome, and that's setting up that lifestyle that you can keep it going after that point. Yeah? And then we never get back to that point where we were at the start, rather than going, do something, think it's going to fix it, and then falling back into that trap and just being in that constant cycle. We want to try to break that cycle. Yeah? When we're talking about accurate tracking intake, so if you were to track or anything like that too, don't forget about that little piece of chocolate you ate during the day. Don't forget about the extra sauce you added on your food. It all adds up. So we might be tracking our intake and going, that's how much I'm eating, why am I not getting results? I actually was talking to my sister about this the other night, and I said, how much sauce did you put on that? And she said 5 mils. And I went, did you really put on 5 mils? That's like a drop. Yeah? So, like, and she goes, oh, no, it's more like this. So, okay, that's probably more, that's probably more like 20 mils. Like, so if you don't have that awareness, it might be worth. So it's having that awareness too of, okay, can I accurately make sure there's nothing I'm missing out on? Am I missing out on a chocolate? A single piece of chocolate might be 50 calories.
Just gotta be honest with yourself.
Yeah, be honest, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, and then, yeah, and then when we're talking about subtracting and stuff, that's when, like, even though again it sounds really obsessive to weigh your food, do it for a week just to know what a serving size looks like, and then move away from it. Because otherwise, like, she thought 5 mils was like a normal serving size, and if I actually weighed that in front of her, it'd be like, oh, okay, that's 5 mils. Yeah, I didn't eat that. So just being aware of that.
Shay, one thing that I was doing that I didn't realise was what I was eating while I was preparing the meal. So like, I was just like unconsciously just snacking while you're preparing the meal. And
yeah, but when you open your oven and you're like, I'm just going to eat this.
Yeah.
So all that stuff, like that could add an extra 100 to 200 calories, 300 calories a day.
Yeah.
Another common one too is milk, like the coffees. People don't track their coffees, which is fine if it's a black coffee. That's probably only 2 calories or something. But if it's a coffee, it's got milk and sugar. It could be 300 calories that you're missing. Yeah. So that again, if we're then talking about that 10% deficit, your 10% deficit might only be 300 calories less a day.
And what do you cook your food in?
Yeah. So that's another thing too. And you're cooking your food in oil. 1 tablespoon of oil is like 120 calories.
Wow.
Like, so if you cook
Non-stick pan.
non-stick pan, nothing, don't waste calories.
Stop being so practical.
What if you just use like a spray?
Or can you bake food instead
But
of
how do you
using
track
oil?
that?
Can you use like a light butter instead of like a high-fat dairy butter? Food, like a lot of my food, like if you're cooking with fruit and if you're cooking with veggies, a lot of that stuff releases water anyway, and you can kind of use that water to cook in. Garlic, anything like that that's minced already.
Did you like coconut oil?
Same thing. Doesn't matter the oil, doesn't matter the sugar, they still have the same thing. So whether it's Coke, there's no like, saying we're talking about oils, there's not like one that's super better than the other. Like we should moderate any of those. Most unrefined, probably the best one is probably olive oil, but even then it's not like you want to douse everything in olive oil because, like I said, 1 tablespoon, which is like that amount, is 120 calories, 150 calories, and that's that amount. Like how much of that, like how many of you are actually using that amount?
What a waste
Oh,
of calories.
Yeah, when you can do like,
Looks on his salt like.
yeah. Think about it. So if you can watch out for things like that, that's
Yeah.
helpful. Or maybe like a spray.
On your oil bottom.
And a small one, don't
With
overuse
the
it.
spray, that's all.
Yeah, just a light spray.
Yeah.
Where we can, we might want to reduce it. But again, we do want small amounts of fat in our diet too, so it's not going to have a huge effect. So, yeah. When we're then talking about like our weekly, so instead of saying like I have to perfectly eat the same amount every day, look at a weekly average instead. Okay, so that's the way I like to structure my own food. Instead of having that I'm aiming for X amount of food every single day, I'm looking at my weekly average to hit that amount. Yeah? Because realistically, you might have a social event on the weekend. It's going to be hard to eat lower calorie foods because foods, when you're eating out, they're not aware of your calorie goals or your fat loss goals. They're making food taste good, so it's going to be higher calories. They're going to add extra oil. They're going to add everything like that. So, yeah, you might eat fewer calories some days, eat high calories other days. Doesn't matter as long as it all balances out. You're still eating that protein, set protein target every day. On the other end, you might do a super intense training session and you might be starving. Eat more food. Your body's telling you you need more food to refuel your body after that training session. And then another day you might go, I'm not really hungry. Use it to your advantage. You might cut down a little bit of calories on that day. That's fine. As long as overall across that week you are eating enough, you're eating towards that set target, there's not going to be an issue with that, rather than aiming for that daily perfection. On the other hand, like we said before, if you have a day where you eat a little bit more food, you have a bit of chocolate because you don't like it, and you went slightly over calories, who cares? Tomorrow, your next meal, you can do a bit better. Doesn't matter. It's not going to, in the week scheme of things, it's not going to affect that progress, as opposed to going, oh, I've wrecked my day, I better be super restrictive tomorrow, and then the following day after that comes and you do the same cycle for that week, and I'll start again on Monday. Don't do that. Just again, you can restart on Saturday. You can restart on Sunday. It's
Every meal.
yeah, every meal you can reset. So those little things. Aiming for being realistic, aiming for that weekly average instead of being daily perfection. Yeah. You might have some good days and bad days as long as. And when we're talking about compliance with the goal, we're looking at instead of again that 100% compliance, that 100% perfectionism, somewhere around that 75 to 85%. That's going to get you results. It's not like you have to be perfect. You can go out and have that meal with a friend. It's as long as that majority of that time you are being consistent. We know that with our own training, it's not like every session we're absolutely hitting the numbers we want and we're training as well as we can. We just come back and we go, next session will be better. Same concept with your eating, yeah? So same thing. Because I think a lot of us find it easy to train and have that done, but then the nutrition part's hard. Start applying the same principles that you do to yourself in training to your nutrition. Yeah, it's not that uncomplicated. It's not that complicated. It's once you start realizing all these things and you go a bit easier on yourself and you just be realistic with it. Like it's a lot more doable and it's a lot more sustainable for life than being super hard and beating yourself up about not being perfect. None of us are perfect. So, and people that are like it's crazy. None of us are CrossFit Games athletes or anything like that. We might want to be, or but again, we're not having to be absolutely perfect because we're just here to be healthier, be fitter, feel stronger. Feel better. Yeah, so just prioritize that. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. So, any other questions on that?
As Guy said, I'd just like to have some ideas of what to eat.
What to eat? So there's plenty. Like there's everything differently. Like I can give people meal like a meal plan. I could say it's this.
Yeah.
But then a lot of people with the mentality of that is they think, oh no, if I don't stick to that meal plan, I failed. What can I eat instead of that?
Yeah.
So it's saying what can you eat, and then how can we make sure there's enough protein in it? How can we make sure there's enough veggies and fruit? If we're looking to lower calories, can we reduce that whole grains and prioritize more fruit and veggies? Can we reduce that fat? Can we not cook with oil? And then foods like. Again, anything that consumes that, like my staples is I love stir fries. I make heaps of stir fries. I change the rice between pasta. You can eat the same thing every day. If you enjoy it, there's nothing wrong with that.
That's my problem, I can't.
Every day. Like when we say foods are, again, like you can still eat lasagna, you can still eat pasta. It's just going, how can I make that meal? Instead of making it like a standard lasagna, look at that. It's pasta, beef, cheese, and cream and fatty, like things that are going to end up, you have one slice and it might be like 1,000 calories or something like that. How can we make that smaller? How can we make that better? Can we reduce those pasta sheets and use some flavor in it? Can we bulk it up with some zucchini, carrots that's probably going to add like 20 to 30 calories extra, but it makes the meal bigger so you eat less of the cheese? Can we substitute for a lighter cheese? Can we use less oils? Can we use cream, milk, anything like that. It's just like any meal, like whatever you enjoy eating, you can make it, and you just make it more health conscious. Ask your friends, look on Google, there's plenty of ideas out there.
It's a couple pages.
I have a question. Is timing really important?
Yeah, so meal timing?
Great question.
So I would
Especially
that way
with
you can
carbs,
just
like say if you're having something for dinner, should you stay away from, say, you know how you said have a sandwich?
Yeah.
That would be more for lunchtime. Would you
No,
stay
anytime,
away from
anytime.
something?
I eat dinner when I finish here coaching on a Monday night or Tuesday night. When I finish here at 7:30, I'm not eating dinner till like 8 p.m. that night. And most people would deem that as, oh my god, you're eating dinner at 8 p.m. That's so like that's bad because then you're going to bed not long after. It's not the case. Like it's not. If we're looking at again that maintenance, that daily calories, doesn't matter if you eat it in 7 meals or you eat it in a single meal. If you're consuming that amount per day and your body is burning set X other amount, if you're in a slight deficit, you're going to lose weight regardless of how you eat it. Yeah?
But going to bed full isn't recommended anyway, is it? Like, is
I
it bad? Did you
How
find
do you sleep on it?
I
How
need
do you not
to because
sleep on it?
otherwise I'll get up
Yeah.
and snack.
Yeah,
That's
so
what
some
I do.
people,
I get up at like midnight.
and I hear other
So I
people
need
say they
to
wake
go
up and they're
for
like, I'm so hungry. Well, eat closer to dinner, eat
Yeah.
before you go to bed. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like, again, that comes back to that fad diet. Like, a lot of the things you hear out there, then miss. None of them are
So
really
it's
true.
2 hours a week.
So
and
don't
sleep
listen, like,
is
if you hear something, make sure it's coming from a reliable source, like, because it's like,
I'll
half
make
of
on
it is
Facebook.
But yeah, I'll go to bed full, then won't snack, but then in the morning I'm not hungry until
and
like
fine.
lunchtime.
And so that's talking
Yeah.
back to, it's not like you have to eat breakfast because you don't enjoy breakfast. Don't eat it, doesn't matter. When we consider things like that, it is if we don't then eat breakfast, but by the time we get to mid-afternoon we crash and we sugar crave, that's when we might go, oh, maybe if I ate breakfast I wouldn't have that happen. That's when we might consider, okay, maybe we should eat breakfast. But if you eat a normal day, you don't like breakfast but you eat it anyway, it might end up adding an extra 300 calories from your day that you could have otherwise saved and been in that deficit for. So it's not like there's no rules to what time you should eat because it's in the big picture. Like as long as we're balancing that total energy intake, as long as we're eating enough protein, as long as we're eating enough of those vitamins and minerals to support our health, it's not going to affect progress. It's not going to make you gain a stack of weight. There's too many things out there that are just missed and we're ill-informed about all these concepts that are not true. So don't believe everything you hear at all. Question everything you hear and do the research and make sure you understand. And then when we're talking about meal timing, so you can't eat once a day, you can't eat 7 times a day. The only time you might consider it, and again this is a 1%er, this is after you're making sure that energy balance and that daily protein intake, everything's hit. Like I said, when we came back to that protein, we have a protein pool effect. So we can only absorb so much, the remainder pretty much gets excreted or it gets converted to carbs anyway, yeah? So when we're talking about that, we might want to spread out our protein. So we might want to, instead of having protein in one big lump because our body can only intake so much protein at once, we might go, okay, I'll have protein at breakfast, I'll have protein at lunch, I'll have protein at dinner, I'll have a snack. So you might eat, and even then, like we're saying, lunch doesn't have to be at 12 o'clock. Like again, coming back to my meal times, like on a Monday, I eat breakfast probably 7, 8 o'clock. I eat another meal at like 10:30, 11 because I'm hungry then, so that's lunch or whatever you want to call it. I then don't eat at 12, I eat again at like 3 p.m. before I start the classes because otherwise I'll be hungry on the other side. So my meal times are wherever suits me for that day. It doesn't have to be eat this time, just eat 4 spread out meals every 3 to 5 hours so you make sure you're satisfied. You make sure you're getting that protein spread out if you can. And that that's probably just for that 1% of that extra benefit you might get from it. And then when we're talking about, again, carbs, we might think of prioritizing carbs around your training because carbs, we know, fuel our body.
Yeah,
So
that's what I meant, Shay, was should you stay away from timing? I meant, should you stay away from carbs at night time?
Again, it doesn't
or
matter
just
that.
like spread it out.
It doesn't matter that, but if you want to prioritize carbs at any particular time, prioritize it before your workout because you get the best performance.
Okay.
But eating it at night time, because your body, like I said, your body uses carbs to fuel your body. When we're talking about, your brain is only fueled by carbs. So if you're depleting your body with that, it's going through all these extra efforts to digest these, to convert it to a carb, for your body to use it as a carb.
Is that why it's always telling me to eat carbs?
It can't eat carbs, so it can't taste
We
good.
always eat carbs.
So stuff like that you might, and then also when we're talking about recovery, so after a session, carbs and protein we want to eat after a session. Like it doesn't matter if it's perfectly after, especially if you're not going to train again till that time again tomorrow, because you'll definitely eat enough by then. However, if we're feeling like we're getting a bit sore and when we're coming into a diet and our calories are a little bit more restrictive, we might want to eat a bit more carbs and protein just after our workout to make sure we're recovering, to make sure we're feeling better and we're not coming back to the gym tomorrow like buggered and really sore. So that's when timing might be a bit important when we're prioritising that performance. So in that, the only meal timing I'd recommend in that is carbs before a workout and protein and carbs after a workout to prioritise. And then if we're talking about, I guess, that meal timing, if you eat a meal at one time and you don't eat again until 3 to 5 hours later, put the training right in the middle. That way we're not going super ridiculous out doing protein. Simple as that.
I've been doing the fast for 18 hours this week, just trying, I've never done it before.
Yeah.
It's something, you want to go into the 20, I think eventually, but it makes you sleep.
Yeah.
What's 2 kilos so far?
So that's probably because it's reduced the amount you take.
Yeah. Have you guys tried anything this week?
Yeah.
Like, it's first
Not
week
this
in.
week, but
Anyone?
I
Have you?
fasted.
They've
Fasting?
done, I've done
I
fasting.
fast.
Yeah. Like I said, they're not a bad thing. Like you
I
yeah.
tried
Yeah,
to do
Julius.
the tracking last time.
But I've probably played.
Yeah.
I think I just.
And again, it's like it's
I
not saying it
had-
doesn't
yeah,
work,
it's
but then when you get
for
to
the
a day
last
where you don't eat any
12
window,
weeks
don't think
actually
that
just,
you've
like,
given up. Just go
revamping
back
my
to
diet
normal.
already,
If you feel like a day where you wake up
I
super hungry or
I plateaued until about
but you don't want to see. That's when we're talking
I've been
about
up
training
about 2
fast.
months.
So training fast is going to be so much harder, and you're probably not going to get as much
Yeah.
out of it as if training fed.
like
I
exactly.
like training fast in the morning.
Yeah, and if it works better
Yeah,
for
I know it's
What I
like,
do.
See, I'm like never trained fast.
Yeah, but you know what might be
Even
more
when I
worthwhile
do this early classes, I probably eat like an actual something pre-workout because I train better. I get better performance-wise if I eat something before I work out. Yeah. Science-wise, you actually do it makes sense, but also physical-wise, like
No matter what you
again,
do, it's all mathematical. Isn't it? You need like
And
that
it-
deficit or surplus.
there is, and
whatever
again,
it
it
is.
does come down to your personal preferences though. Because again, there's no point in me giving you like a strict plan and telling you to do all this stuff if you hate it and you're not going to do it. Like that's not going to work for you. So it's just finding again, there's a bit of maths behind it, a bit of science behind it, and then it's also always comes back to finding what works best for you.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Oh, sorry.
sorry,
Yeah,
no.
no,
I find in terms of fasting, sometimes like the first week or two is shit.
Yeah.
Because I find, I don't know whether this is, I could be pulling this out of my ass. So
No,
maybe
it
this
was
is a thing.
pretty like.
But I find,
It's
yeah, the
shit
first
this
2
week.
weeks are shit, but if you eat really, that's because like you're usually coming off, say like 2 weeks of not eating that well. And then I
Yeah.
find, because that's what I've been doing the last probably 12 weeks, is just changing the way I shop more than anything.
Yeah.
So I've been eating better in terms of like vitamins, minerals, cut out supplements, stuff like that. And I found that fasting's now easier. You know what I mean? Because I think like in terms of like your body is still operating a little bit of what you spent the last say 2 weeks building. You know what I mean? Because you don't instantly use all your carbs in one day. You know what I mean? Like you still store it.
Yeah, I'm
Right?
just doing me. I really. I only eat a couple of later in the afternoon. Now.
Yeah.
I think I eat around 1 o'clock.
Yeah, and again, you can do it.
Dinner
'Cause
and
again,
that's
you're shortening off such a period of time that you're not eating,
Yeah.
which is why it works.
I was getting cravings and things, and I was
Yeah.
trying to get
Yeah.
water
And so,
Like
and
coffee shop.
or
and
alternatively,
supplementations where I was like, other things.
yeah,
like
alternatively, you don't have to
as well.
perfectly do that every day too.
Yeah.
Like naturally today I fasted. I haven't ate because I got up so early that I wasn't eating breakfast at that time.
It's called Rare does like a 30-hour
That
fast.
that's
Yeah.
Every
ridiculous.
week he does
Again,
it,
that's
like,
risking.
yeah.
That makes it.
And he's
harder.
got the next level of what he's doing. I think
He
he's
did
trying
60
to
hours
do
Yeah.
that as well.
Again, if it works for
Yeah,
him,
if
cool. If it works,
he does like a cleanse fast.
but it doesn't mean that somebody else should do it and that will work for that other person.
Everything was
Yeah.
That's what I'm making.
I am
I'll
not.
try it and I'm going to try and go. I'll see if I can get 12.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. But then if you don't feel stressed.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely try
Yeah.
something else, but.
Yeah. So that's it, guys. That's everything. If you guys want to keep talking about what you're doing or different strategies, go for it. Questions, go for it.
How do you eat before a workout at 6 a.m.?
I myself would eat.
Not really.
No.
What works for me, no. So if I was
That's
working out at
hard
6 a.m.
to
workout, I would probably give myself like 30 minutes, 15 minutes to get up, 15 minutes to get here, which means I'm eating half an hour before my workout, and I might eat.
I wake up like 10 minutes before I have to be here.
Yeah. Well, again,
Alright,
so
it
what
takes you
I'm eating
15
that
minutes.
time would be something that is a small serving of easy digestible carbs.
Okay.
Probably saying with not much fiber because that's gonna maybe upset your gut.
Half a banana.
Apple.
Yeah, apples always.
But some people say
Banana.
apples are too acidic. Banana.
Half a banana.
Apples are
I eat
nice.
sultanas.
I taste very well like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I eat a handful of sultanas. That's my.
But how close is that? Because like the
Yeah,
drive
what
here
to
is like
do?
6 minutes away.
Right.
That's
If you-
where I
if
wake
you
Get
up.
up early and try
Take the long way, yeah. Take the
Try
long
it.
way.
If you do it and you feel good, cool.
Okay.
If you don't
Because I
know.
usually don't.
Another one that could be really easy is liquid calories. So think
Yeah,
of
cool.
Gatorade, think of cordial. You like cordial, sugar cordial, not like low sugar or anything like that, because that takes away the carbs.
Yeah.
So even though you can have a lolly, like
Yeah.
that's going to be really quick, easy digestible carbs, and again, it might not make you feel sick.
Okay.
Because then that's what you're playing with. You're playing with what might make you feel sick.
But it's better to eat at night.
Huh?
It's better to eat at night before coming, performance-wise.
Performance-wise, still depends. Personal
Yeah.
preference.
Okay.
Like if you find like again, if you eat something but you're constantly that whole time thinking about how sick you feel, and you feel like shit in training, then no, it's not for you. But if you're somebody who does, then yeah. But in the big scheme of things, you've probably not like worked out or lost a whole heap of calories since that time the day before.
That I ate.
So you still have. It's
Yeah.
not like you're completely depleted when you wake up.
Yeah.
It's just you're not in your ideal state, I guess.
My brother going back.
So you're not depleted. It's still there. You still stored it. It's just you don't have that immediate access. So it might just be like
have an apple.
yeah.
Yeah, but
Like,
even his.
I don't play with it.
Okay.
I can't eat
Just give it a
Yeah.
go.
It's
So-
fun. If
Yeah.
it works, like, and then I've had like clients or people when they go, nah, no matter what I do, no matter what I eat, I feel like crap.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Then.
Yeah.
Beautiful. If you train well
Okay.
fast, like fasted, train well fast.
Yeah.
And it might depend on the training type too. If you come in here and doing one of these sessions, it might be alright. But if you go out for a 10k run or something ridiculous there,
Yeah.
you probably.
Because I think it depends on the day. Like some workouts I feel fine, but then like fucking Wednesday this week, I almost died.
Do you take any
So,
supplements
and
before
again,
training?
No, nothing.
But again,
I
that's
wake
kind
up, I wake up and I come
yeah,
here.
but and that's probably that's caffeine too. So if you in an
Yeah,
ideal
I'm
state
late
too,
most
as a
mornings.
pre-workout, if we have caffeine pre-workout,
Sorry,
caffeine
close
can
that.
be performance enhancing.
Yeah.
So we can have caffeine within the 60, anything over 60 minutes doesn't have benefit. So it has to be within 60 minutes.
Okay.
But again, if you did that 10 minutes before you work out and that made you feel sick,
Don't do it.
Which you see me coming.
I think I think that would be too close. Like for me, I wouldn't be any less than 30 minutes before. Probably
Half an hour,
not.
okay.
It'd probably be too hard. But then again,
Who knows?
like I said, probably just drink some cordial, some Gatorade, or have it so you can try training faster if you think you're fine, and then on a random day where you don't feel like it's going to work well, you have that drink on the side that you can drink for that extra boost of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why like if we're talking about marathon, they're having all their nutrition during their workouts, like when they need to, because they need to keep refueling their body.
Okay.
That's what they're having. They're having like Gatorade and
Yeah.
things like that. That's easy to digest.
Yeah. Okay. Just give it a go.
Yeah, trial. It's all trial and error. There's no right or wrong. Just more nutritionally informed, but but yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Shay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.